Now, let me ask you this: how well do you really know the people you call family? We often think we're in control of our lives, that we know our loved ones inside and out, but what happens when a small spark, something as innocent as a school project, sparks a chain reaction that exposes long-buried secrets? A simple biology report led a girl named Emma to do something that changed everything: a DNA test. But what seemed like a harmless decision turned into an explosion of life-altering revelations. Because, once she had those results, she couldn't unsee what they told her. And that's when everything started to fall apart. You might be wondering, what does a DNA test have to do with anything? Why would it destroy families? Well, let me set the stage for you. Emma was just a regular teenager, curious, intelligent, but not prepared for the bombshell she was about to uncover. She didn't know that her school project would lead her down a rabbit hole, unearthing dark family secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. She was excited to learn about her biology project and was intrigued by the DNA testing process. Like any teenager, Emma thought she was simply getting answers to a few academic questions. What she didn't realize was that this test wasn't just going to answer scientific inquiries, it was going to raise questions about her own existence and the identity of the people closest to her. What Emma didn't know was that her biological family history wasn't as simple as it seemed. The test results revealed a twist no one expected, and that's where everything spirals. The unexpected truth, one that seemed trivial at first, ended up destroying relationships that had lasted for years, breaking down the walls of trust that Emma had built with the people she loved. In the blink of an eye, she found herself at the center of a storm of accusations, confusion, and pain. You see, when secrets like this come to light, they don't just affect one person. They shake everyone involved to their core. This story isn't just about DNA tests or biology. It's about the complicated web of family, identity, and the often hidden truths we try to suppress. It's about the consequences of digging too deep into your own history. It's about how one action, one moment of curiosity, can lead to a domino effect that changes the course of your life and the lives of those around you. And Emma? Well, she's just one part of this tangled web. There are two families involved in this story, and what begins as a personal investigation quickly becomes a public battle. Emma, once just a girl looking for answers for her report, becomes the central figure in a family feud that tears through everyone involved. The fallout is beyond anything she could have ever imagined. But here's the thing: what you're about to see isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of how everything can change in an instant. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you stumbled upon a truth that you wish you hadn't? Something that shattered everything you thought was solid and stable? Emma's moment came when she read those DNA test results, and nothing in her life would ever be the same. And now, she has to face the consequences of what she's uncovered, consequences that go beyond her, that reach into the hearts of two families. What happens next is a rollercoaster of emotions, tension, and shocking twists, and I promise you, you won't see the ending coming. But we can't rush through it all yet. The questions keep piling up. Who was hiding what? How deep do these secrets go? What happens when those you trust the most turn out to have been hiding life-altering truths? And more importantly, how does Emma handle the fallout? Does she fix the mess that's been made? Does she try to put things back together? Or does she become part of a conflict that changes everything, forever? Before we dive deeper into this whirlwind of family drama, betrayal, and discovery, think about your own family. Think about the people you trust the most. Could there be something lurking just beneath the surface, something that could change everything you know about them? It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? But it's a reality that Emma has to face. And in this video, we're going to take you step by step through the heartbreaking revelations, the shock, and the emotional aftermath of this story. So here's where you come in. As you watch, I want you to think about what you would do in Emma's position. Would you have asked for that DNA test in the first place? Would you have kept digging, knowing that you might unravel something that could tear your family apart? The questions are only beginning. And the truth? Well, that's about to hit harder than anything you've ever experienced. By the end of this video, you'll see how Emma's decision created an explosive chain of events that no one could have predicted. You'll understand the real cost of uncovering the truth, and you'll never look at your own family in quite the same way again. So, let me ask you to stick around. Watch this story unfold. Trust me, by the end of it, you'll be left on the edge of your seat, needing answers you never thought you'd be searching for. If you're curious about how one simple test could destroy not just one, but two families, and what happens when the truth comes crashing in, this is the story you can't afford to miss. Stay tuned, because you won't believe what happens next. As Emma sat quietly in her room, staring at the envelope that contained her DNA test results, it was almost hard to believe what she was looking at. The text on the page was clear, factual even, but it didn't match what she thought she knew about her life. She had been in a whirlwind of emotions ever since she got the idea for the biology report. It was supposed to be a simple, straightforward project. What she hadn't anticipated was how it would become so much more, a doorway to uncovering secrets that had been buried for years. Let's rewind a bit, back to the beginning, to understand how Emma found herself in this situation. It all started when her biology teacher assigned a class project on genetics. The topic: a deep dive into the mystery of DNA, what makes us who we are, where we come from, and how we're connected to the people around us. It was an assignment Emma was eager to take on. Being naturally curious and always a high achiever, she dove into the project headfirst, eager to learn as much as she could. But then something happened that completely derailed her research and changed everything. In the midst of gathering information for her report, Emma stumbled upon an article about genetic testing. It was fascinating. She thought it was the perfect example of how biology could be applied in real life, and after some thought, she decided to take the plunge. She'd already seen ads for companies offering at-home DNA tests, promising to uncover family secrets, connect you with distant relatives, and even tell you about your ancestry. Emma had always been curious about her own family history. She knew bits and pieces from stories her parents had told her, but something about the idea of testing it scientifically intrigued her. Maybe there was more to her family's story than she'd been told. So, with her report deadline approaching and the DNA test results promising to be an interesting angle, Emma ordered the test, not realizing the storm she was about to unleash. She wasn't prepared for what came next. Who was this person? What did they have to do with her? Was this just some random coincidence, or was there something far deeper at play? Emma, in her shock and confusion, turned to her parents, desperate for answers. But instead of the reassurance she expected, her questions only seemed to make them nervous, even defensive. They brushed it off at first, insisting there had to be some mistake with the test. But Emma's instincts told her there was more to the story. There were things her parents weren't telling her, things they were trying to keep hidden. And that nagging suspicion, that feeling of something being terribly wrong, was growing stronger by the minute. The tension in the house began to rise as Emma dug deeper. She couldn't let go of the test results. Every conversation with her parents seemed strained, as if they were walking on eggshells around her, avoiding eye contact, offering up vague excuses that didn't quite add up. The more Emma tried to piece together the truth, the more she realized that the picture she had of her family was incomplete, even distorted. There were gaps in the stories they'd told her, moments in her past that didn't align with what she was discovering. Could it be possible that her parents weren't being truthful with her? Was there something about her own origins that they had kept hidden for all these years? It wasn't just her parents that were acting strange, though. Emma's closest friends also seemed to be keeping their distance. At first, she thought it was just the normal ebb and flow of teenage friendships. People got busy, lives changed, and sometimes you just drift apart. But when she tried to talk to her best friend, Lily, about what she was going through, Lily acted weirdly distant, almost avoiding the conversation. Emma couldn't understand why. Had she made a mistake? Was she overthinking everything? Or was there something about Lily's behavior that was somehow connected to the strange new direction her life had taken? It all felt like one big, confusing puzzle, with pieces scattered all over the place, and Emma was desperate to put them together. Now, here's where things take a more unsettling turn. As Emma started researching her family's history further, she made another discovery: an old letter, hidden in a drawer that no one had touched in years. The letter was from someone named Aunt Jessica, a woman Emma had never heard of. The contents of the letter weren't what she expected. It was filled with cryptic references to a past relationship, hints at a family secret, and a warning to her parents about a potential danger that could resurface. The letter was old, yellowed with age, and it seemed like a relic from a different time, one that Emma had never been part of. But the mention of her name in connection to this Aunt Jessica made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Was this the same woman mentioned in the DNA test? Was this letter evidence of something her parents had tried to bury? Suddenly, everything seemed connected, yet completely out of reach. Emma couldn't make sense of the puzzle pieces. But one thing was becoming clear: this wasn't just about a school project anymore. This was about something much bigger, something her family had been hiding from her, and something she was about to uncover, no matter the cost. She was beginning to realize that the truth was out there, but it was tangled in a web of lies, red herrings, and hidden motives. It wasn't just her parents who might be hiding something. It seemed like everyone in her life had their own secrets, secrets that had been buried for far too long. As Emma wrestled with these newfound revelations, she realized that this story was bigger than just one family. There were others involved, others whose lives were about to collide with hers in ways that could never be undone. The more she dug, the more she found, leading her to question everything she thought she knew about her own identity. And just when she thought she might be getting close to the truth, something unexpected happened. A person from her past, a face she hadn't seen in years, reappeared, and suddenly everything she discovered felt like a carefully orchestrated game, with her at the center. Was this person a friend, a foe, or something else entirely? The mystery was deepening, and Emma had only scratched the surface. But one thing was certain: she was no longer just a girl doing a biology report. She was now a player in a much larger drama, and the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. As Emma's search for answers began to intensify, the obstacles she faced grew more and more daunting. At first, it seemed like the more she uncovered, the closer she came to solving the mystery. But soon, it felt like every time she was about to connect the dots, something or someone would push her back into the darkness. One evening, as she sat hunched over her desk, poring over the old family photos and letters she had found hidden in the attic, she stumbled across something that made her heart skip a beat. It was a photograph, a family portrait, taken years ago at a gathering that she didn't even remember. There was her father, standing tall beside her mother, smiling in that way that made it look like their love story was picture perfect. But there was a person in the background, someone Emma didn't recognize, someone whose face seemed too familiar yet completely out of place. They were smiling in the background of this photograph, standing just off to the side, and that was when Emma noticed the name scribbled on the back, Aunt Jessica. The same name from the mysterious letter. Emma froze. She felt a shiver crawl up her spine as the pieces of the puzzle began to shift in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was certain that this photograph held the key to something she hadn't yet understood. But just as she reached for the photo to inspect it more closely, a loud noise startled her. Her heart pounded as she turned around, half expecting someone to be standing in her room. But when she looked back at the photo, it was gone. Just like that, it had vanished, as if it had never been there at all. Emma scrambled through her desk, flipping over papers, searching every corner of her room, but it was nowhere to be found. Had she imagined it? Or had someone who didn't want her to find the truth, taken it? The feeling of being watched, of being one step behind, gripped her as the uncertainty sank in. Who was pulling the strings behind the scenes? A few days later, just as Emma was beginning to gather her thoughts again, something even more alarming happened. She was at school, talking to Lily about her discoveries and the strange things she had found. Lily, who had been acting distant for weeks, seemed to take on a strange expression. There was something unsettling in her eyes, something Emma couldn't place. "Maybe you should stop, Em," Lily said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "You're digging up things you don't want to know. Some things are better left buried." Emma blinked in disbelief. Why would Lily, her best friend, say something like that? Was she warning her? Or was she trying to push Emma into letting go of the truth? The words echoed in her mind, and the more Emma thought about it, the more she realized that Lily had been acting strange ever since she started the investigation. It was as if she knew more than she was letting on. Emma wasn't sure if she could trust Lily anymore. Her best friend's sudden change in behavior was more than just the typical teenage mood swings. It felt like a red flag, a sign that something was off. But it wasn't just Lily. The closer Emma came to the truth, the more resistance she encountered. Her parents, who had once been her pillars of support, became more secretive with each passing day. They avoided her questions, brushed off her concerns, and made excuses to keep her away from the attic where she had found the letters and photographs. It felt as though they were trying to control the flow of information, keeping her trapped in a maze of half-truths and silence. One night, after dinner, her father sat her down in the living room, his expression stern and serious. "Emma," he began, his voice low, "you need to stop this. Stop asking questions. There are things you don't understand, and it's better for everyone if you just forget about this whole thing. I'm asking you to trust me." His words were calm, measured, but the look in his eyes betrayed a deep fear of what might happen if Emma didn't let it go. Her heart pounded as she absorbed his words. What was so dangerous about the truth? Why was her family so terrified of her finding out more? Emma felt a wave of frustration and confusion sweep over her. She was so close, she could feel it. She was on the verge of discovering something massive, something that could explain everything. But every time she got close, someone or something pushed her back. It was like she was trapped in a web, and no matter how hard she tried to break free, the strands only grew tighter. And then, as if the universe were conspiring against her, Emma's phone buzzed late one evening, a text from an unknown number flashing on her screen. Her fingers trembled as she read the message. "Stop digging. You don't want to know the truth. Leave it alone before it's too late." The message was chilling in its simplicity, but what struck her most was the fact that the number was completely unfamiliar. Who could be sending her these cryptic warnings? Was it someone from her family trying to intimidate her into silence, or was it someone else, someone with a personal stake in keeping her from uncovering the truth? Emma's mind raced, but there was no time to dwell on it. The feeling of being hunted, of being watched from the shadows, was closing in on her. Despite the mounting pressure, Emma couldn't stop herself. She needed to know what had happened in her family's past, and she was determined to find out. It wasn't just about the test results anymore, it was about the truth that had been kept hidden from her for so long. She had to know what her parents were hiding, who Aunt Jessica was, and why everything around her was crumbling as she dug deeper. But just when Emma thought she might be getting closer to uncovering the truth, an even more startling twist occurred. A package arrived at her doorstep one afternoon. The box was unmarked, with no return address, and it contained only one thing: a single, worn-out diary, its pages yellowed and fragile. Inside, there were personal notes, sketches, and names that seemed eerily familiar. As she flipped through the pages, Emma stumbled upon a passage that made her blood run cold. It was a confession, written by someone she thought she could trust, a confession that revealed a betrayal so deep, it had the power to shatter everything she had ever believed. But before she could read more, the power went out. The room went dark. Emma's breath caught in her throat. What was happening? Was someone in her house? Was this her final warning? In the silence that followed, all she could hear was her own heartbeat, echoing in the quiet, as she wondered, what had she just uncovered? Was this the final piece of the puzzle, or had she just walked into a trap that would change her life forever? With the mystery deepening, Emma realized that she was no longer just a curious teenager doing a school project. She was a key player in a dangerous game, and the stakes had never been higher. Would she find the truth, or would the truth find her first? As Emma sat frozen in the darkness, her heart racing in sync with the sound of her pulse in her ears, the weight of the diary in her hands felt heavier than ever. The power hadn't come back on, and the eerie silence surrounding her house seemed to close in from all sides. She held her breath, listening for any sound, but the only thing she could hear was her own thoughts, spiraling out of control. What had happened? Who was behind this? And why was this diary suddenly in her possession, a relic from the past that had to be connected to everything she was uncovering? But just as she was about to force herself to turn the pages once more, the sharp sound of her phone vibrating on the floor broke through the stillness. Emma scrambled for it, her hands shaking, and saw that it was a message, this time from Lily. Please. Just stop. It's not worth it." The words were almost identical to the ones she'd read in that mysterious text earlier, the one warning her to leave the truth alone. But this time, it was from Lily, her best friend, the one person Emma thought she could trust. Could Lily have been the one sending these warnings? Was she somehow involved in all of this? The text had come out of nowhere, without any context, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Was it just a coincidence, or was Lily hiding something far more dangerous than Emma realized? She felt a chill crawl up her spine as her phone buzzed again. This time, the message was more direct, and her stomach churned as she read it. "Don't say I didn't warn you. There's more to the story than you know. Some things can't be undone." Emma didn't respond, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pushed into a corner, that her investigation into her family's past was leading her into something darker than she could have imagined. And then, just when the tension seemed unbearable, another unexpected turn of events came crashing into her life. The very next morning, as Emma tried to piece together what had happened the night before, she received a call that would shake everything she thought she knew to its core. It was from her older brother, Lucas, who had been away at college for the past year. His voice was tense, urgent even, as he spoke. "Emma, listen to me. You need to stop. Now. What you're looking into, it's dangerous." His tone wasn't just concerned, it was scared. There was a sharpness to his words, a warning that felt out of place, and Emma's gut twisted with confusion. She hadn't told Lucas anything about the DNA test, the letters, or the diary. Yet somehow, he knew. How could he possibly know about any of this? And why, after all these years, was he suddenly so adamant that she let it go? The conversation left Emma unsettled, her thoughts racing with 100 questions she didn't have answers to. Was Lucas involved in all of this? Was he trying to protect her, or was there more to his fear than he was letting on? The more she thought about it, the more it seemed like Lucas had been hiding something too, something connected to the very secrets she was trying to uncover. It wasn't just the strange messages or the threatening diary. There was a strange tension between her family members that she had never noticed before, a kind of undercurrent that made her wonder how deep this web of deception really went. That evening, after her parents had gone to bed, Emma found herself in the attic again, combing through the old boxes for any clues she may have missed. She didn't know why she was doing this alone. Maybe she felt like it was her last chance to get the truth before everyone closed ranks around her, or maybe it was just the feeling of desperation that had taken over. As she sifted through stacks of papers, an old, worn envelope caught her eye. There was no name on it, but the seal was broken, and the contents inside looked disturbingly familiar. As she pulled out the letter, she recognized the handwriting instantly. It was her father's. But this wasn't a letter addressed to anyone in the family. No, it was addressed to someone named Thomas, a name that Emma had never heard before. The letter seemed to be written in a hurry, and as she read, it became clear that this wasn't just any letter, it was a confession, a desperate plea for forgiveness, a document that hinted at an event that had taken place years ago, something Emma had never been told. The letter spoke of a mistake and the consequences of an irreversible choice. Her father's handwriting was shaky, as if he had written it under extreme stress. "It has to stay hidden. For her sake," the letter said, referring to someone in Emma's life. But who? Could it be her mother? Was there something Emma didn't know about the relationship between her parents, something they had both tried to keep hidden? Her head swam with the possibilities, but as she reached the final lines of the letter, the power suddenly came back on with a loud pop, the lights flickering and buzzing to life. Emma jumped, her pulse racing as she glanced around the attic, half expecting someone to be watching her from the shadows. But when she looked back at the letter in her hands, she saw something she couldn't believe there. Scribbled in the corner was the name Jessica. It was the same name again, the same person who had been mentioned in the photograph, the letter, and the mysterious DNA test. Was this person the key to everything? Was Jessica the link that tied all these secrets together, or was she just a pawn in a much larger game? Emma didn't know anymore, but what she did know was that the more she uncovered, the more she was stumbling into a world of lies, deceit, and betrayal. Just when she thought she had a grip on the truth, it felt like everything was slipping away, slipping into shadows where no one could follow. And then came the final blow. As Emma was about to put the letter back in its envelope and leave the attic, she heard a sound, a footstep, soft and deliberate, coming from behind her. She whipped around, her breath catching in her throat, but there was no one there. Nothing but the empty shadows of the attic. Her eyes darted nervously across the room, but when she turned back to the letter, it was gone. Vanished, just like the photograph from the night before. The only thing left was a small scrap of paper, folded tightly, and when she unfolded it, her hands went cold. It was a single sentence, written in a handwriting she didn't recognize. "You're getting too close, Emma. Stop now, or it will be too late for all of us." The walls around Emma seemed to close in. Who was watching her? Who was sending these threats? The stakes had never been higher, and now, more than ever, Emma felt the weight of the danger she was in. As the mystery deepened, she was no longer sure who to trust, her parents, her brother, or even Lily. With every clue she uncovered, more questions arose, and it seemed that the closer she came to the truth, the more people were willing to do anything to stop her. The question was, who could she turn to when everyone around her seemed to have something to hide? Was anyone in her life who they appeared to be? It all spiraled out of control the following evening, when Emma's world shifted from the unsettling into something far more dangerous. She had just left school, the weight of the mystery pressing on her chest like a vice, her mind buzzing with 1,000 questions, none of which had clear answers. As she walked home, her eyes flicked nervously over her shoulder, the streets stretching out before her in the dimming light. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. It was a subtle feeling at first, like the soft scrape of footsteps just behind her, the sound always a fraction of a second too late for her to catch. But with each step she took, it grew more pronounced, like a shadow inching closer, a presence she couldn't ignore. She tried to brush it off, paranoia, maybe, just a side effect of everything she had been uncovering. But when she turned a corner and caught a glimpse of someone in her peripheral vision, her stomach twisted. The figure had been there, right on the edge of her sight, but when she spun around to look, there was no one. Her heart skipped a beat, her body rigid with the realization that something wasn't right. She could feel her pulse in her throat, her breath shallow, as she quickened her pace. By the time she reached her house, her mind was spinning. Was someone really following her? Or had she imagined it all? The fear that she was losing control of her own thoughts gnawed at her as she rushed inside, locking the door behind her, and leaning against it for a moment to steady herself. She didn't dare tell her parents. They were already on edge, treating her like a bomb ready to explode, as if they knew something that she didn't. Instead, she grabbed her phone, scrolling through the texts and messages she'd received over the last few days. The cryptic warnings. The threats. The strange disappearances of clues. Everything seemed to be spiraling faster than she could keep up with, like a puzzle she was desperately trying to piece together, only to have the pieces slip through her fingers every time. She wanted to call Lily, to confide in her, to get answers, but something inside her hesitated. Ever since that strange conversation with her best friend, the one where Lily had warned her to stop digging, Emma had felt an odd distance between them. It wasn't just the words Lily had said, but the way she had said them. Something had changed. As she sat on her bed, staring at the screen, her phone buzzed again. It was another message from Lily, but this one was different, darker, colder. It read, "I told you to stop. You're too deep now. It's not just about you anymore." Emma's hand trembled as she stared at the screen. The words were cryptic, but they carried a weight that made her blood run cold. What did she mean by "it's not just about you anymore"? Was she threatening Emma, or was she just another pawn caught in the web of secrets that was closing in on them all? Emma's mind raced with the possibilities, her thoughts clouded by fear and confusion. She couldn't ignore the feeling that something was about to happen, something terrible. And then, as if to confirm her growing dread, the unthinkable occurred. The following morning, as Emma was walking to school, she noticed that her brother Lucas was missing. At first, she thought maybe he had just left early, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized something wasn't right. Lucas was never the type to skip out without telling anyone, especially not without leaving a note or at least sending a text. She called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic began to claw at her chest, and a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach made her realize that her worst fear was unfolding before her eyes. Something had happened to Lucas. Something connected to everything she had been uncovering. It wasn't just her anymore, her family was being dragged into this dark, tangled mess too. Frantic, Emma texted her parents, but received no reply. She paced the living room, her mind a chaotic whirlwind, the tension rising with each passing second. She tried calling her dad's office, But again, there was no answer. It felt like the world was slipping out of her control, like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. And then, just when she thought she might lose her mind from the uncertainty, she received a call that made her stomach drop. It was from a blocked number. She hesitated, her heart pounding, before answering. "Hello." Her voice was shaky, unsure of what to expect. A low, distorted voice crackled through the line, the words like poison seeping into her veins. "You're asking too many questions, Emma. You're digging into things that should have stayed buried. You're not going to like what comes next." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice trembling with equal parts fear and anger. But the voice didn't respond to her question. Instead, it simply continued. "Your brother knows more than you think. If you want to see him again, stop now. He's in more danger than you can imagine." The line went dead. Emma stood frozen, her mind struggling to make sense of what had just happened. Danger? What danger? Her pulse was a frantic drumbeat in her ears, and her hands shook violently as she lowered the phone. The words echoed in her mind, "If you want to see him again, stop now." It felt like the walls were closing in. Her entire body trembled as she realized just how deep this nightmare went. It wasn't just about her anymore. It never had been. Her family, her brother, everyone was now caught in a web of secrets that was suffocating them all. And the more she fought to uncover the truth, the more it felt like the truth was going to destroy them all. Emma's mind was spinning with fear and confusion as she tried to piece together the puzzle. She thought of the cryptic messages, the threats, the diary, and the letter from her father that she still hadn't fully deciphered. Was Lucas's disappearance tied to the same dark secret? Was someone from her family involved in all of this? Or was there someone else, someone she hadn't even considered, who had been manipulating them all from the shadows? With every passing moment, the stakes grew higher, the danger more real. Emma's gut told her that she was running out of time. Whoever was behind this knew everything about her family, her brother, and even her every move. It was a game they were playing, but Emma wasn't sure if she was the player or the pawn. As she stood there, overwhelmed by fear, she knew one thing for certain. Lucas was out there, somewhere, and if she didn't figure this out soon, it might be too late to save him. But the more she uncovered, the more she realized that there was no escaping the truth, and sometimes, the truth could be more terrifying than any of the lies that had come before it. The world she once knew, the safety of her family, was unraveling in front of her eyes, and Emma had no idea who to trust or where to turn next. Would the truth set them free, or would it destroy them all? Just when Emma thought she couldn't feel any more lost, the world around her collapsed in on itself, shattering every assumption she'd made about the past few weeks. The fear, the confusion, the unanswered questions, all of it seemed to have led her to a single moment that changed everything. She was sitting in the living room, her phone trembling in her hands after the terrifying call she had received earlier. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making sense. Where was Lucas? Who had taken him? And why did she feel like the more she uncovered, the more questions popped up? The truth was slipping further away, like sand through her fingers. Her heart was still racing, and just as the panic began to rise again, the front door creaked open. Emma's head snapped toward it, but it wasn't her parents, it was Lucas. He stood there in the doorway, eyes wide, as though he had just walked out of a nightmare, his face pale and drawn. He didn't look like himself. His clothes were disheveled, and there was something about the way he carried himself that seemed wrong, off in a way she couldn't place. Emma sprang to her feet, a mix of relief and confusion flooding her chest as she rushed toward him. "Lucas," she cried, her voice cracking with the sheer weight of the fear she'd been carrying for hours. "Where have you been? What happened to you?" But instead of answering, he stepped back, eyes flicking nervously toward the door. "We need to talk," he said in a voice that didn't sound like his own. His tone was low, controlled, like he was trying to keep something from slipping out, from spilling the truth before it was too late. "Lucas, you're scaring me," Emma whispered, her breath catching in her throat. "Where did you go? Who took you?" He closed the door behind him, his gaze never meeting hers as he walked into the living room. He seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if weighing something in his mind before finally speaking. "I wasn't taken, Emma. I wasn't kidnapped or anything like that." He paused again, swallowing hard. I left on my own. I had to. Emma stared at him, bewildered. What? Why? What are you talking about? Lucas looked at her then, his eyes darkened with something she hadn't seen before, guilt, maybe, or fear. It was hard to tell. You're asking too many questions, Em, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're too close to finding out what really happened. The weight of his words hit her like a freight train, and for a moment, Emma couldn't breathe. The tension between them thickened, like they were standing on the edge of a cliff, and one wrong move would send them both tumbling into something neither of them could escape. Her mind reeled. What did he mean by that? She had been chasing answers, desperately trying to make sense of the clues she'd found, but now Lucas was telling her that all of it, the DNA test, the strange letters, the diary, had been a mistake. Was he trying to protect her, or was there something darker at play? And then, just as the questions flooded her, Lucas's next words turned everything Emma thought she knew on its head. It wasn't just Mom and Dad. They weren't the ones keeping the secret. It was me. Emma's heart stopped in her chest. What? No. What are you talking about? Her voice shook, but she couldn't stop herself from stepping closer, her hands trembling as she reached for him. She needed to understand. She needed to know why he was saying this, why he was suddenly confessing something that didn't make sense. Lucas had always been the golden child, the one who never made waves, who always played by the rules. But now, standing in front of her, he seemed like a stranger. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes shifting, as though he was searching for the right words. I found something, Em, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I couldn't live with the truth anymore. Emma's breath caught in her throat. What truth? What have you been hiding, Lucas? Lucas didn't immediately answer. Instead, he turned toward the hallway, his footsteps dragging like he was weighed down by something heavy, like he was struggling to find the strength to confess. She followed him, unable to tear her eyes away from him, as if by standing close enough, she could make sense of the mess of emotions flickering across his face. He stopped in front of the family's study, the one place they never went without reason. The door was ajar, and there, on the floor, was something that made Emma's stomach turn. The same letter from her father, the one she had found hidden in the attic, was on the desk, but this time, it was opened. And beside it, in a pile of neatly stacked documents, were photos. Lucas's hand shook as he reached for one of the photos. He held it out to her, his eyes brimming with something between guilt and desperation. The photo was old, yellowed with age. Emma squinted at it, her breath catching in her throat as she saw who was in the picture. It was her father, standing with another man, one she didn't recognize. But what shocked her wasn't just their faces. It was the location. The photo had been taken in a house Emma recognized, a house she'd only seen in the diary. The same house she had seen described in the letter. This was where it all started, Lucas said, his voice breaking. This is where it all went wrong. He paused, the words hanging in the air, heavy and suffocating. I made a choice, Em. A choice that tore our family apart. And now, I've been trying to keep you from finding out the truth, because if you do, it'll destroy everything. Emma felt a chill race down her spine. Her mind spun as she stared at the photo. The house. The man. Her father. Everything she thought she knew had been a lie, and the pieces that had been falling into place suddenly scattered, more fragmented than ever before. She opened her mouth to speak, to demand answers, but before she could, Lucas stepped back, his face pale, his eyes filled with something else now, fear. You have to understand, Em, he whispered, his voice quivering. This isn't just about us. It's about the things we've buried. The things they'll do to protect themselves. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she finally understood the weight of his words. This wasn't just a family secret. This was something bigger, something darker, that went far beyond the walls of their home. And as she looked at Lucas, her brother, the person she thought she could trust most, she realized that the person who had been hiding the truth all along wasn't the mysterious figure she'd been searching for. It was him. Emma stood there, her hands trembling as she held the photograph Lucas had handed her, her mind struggling to process the impossible reality he had just thrust upon her. The weight of his confession hung in the air like a storm cloud, thick with unanswered questions and the suffocating pressure of a truth she wasn't ready to face. Her brother, her own flesh and blood, had been hiding something from her, something so deep, so dark, that it threatened to tear their family apart. She wanted to scream at him, to demand the full truth, to make sense of this nightmare that was unraveling at an impossible speed, but the fear in his eyes held her back. It wasn't just the mystery of her family's past anymore. It wasn't just about finding the hidden truths buried beneath layers of lies. It was about survival now. Lucas wasn't the only one trapped in this mess, she was too, and she had no idea who she could trust anymore. For the first time, Emma truly understood the gravity of the situation. The decision before her wasn't just about seeking answers, it was about choosing whether to risk everything she loved in order to uncover those answers. The photo, the hidden house, the man in the picture, everything led to a single, undeniable fact: someone in their family had been involved in something far beyond anything Emma could have ever imagined. But the question that kept echoing in her mind, the question that twisted her gut in knots, was why Lucas hadn't told her. Why had he kept her in the dark? And what was it that had driven him to protect this terrible secret, even if it meant putting them all in danger? Lucas didn't speak for what felt like an eternity. His eyes darted nervously around the room, like he was expecting someone to burst in at any moment. Emma could feel the tension between them, like they were standing on the edge of an abyss, and one wrong move would send them both tumbling into a void they couldn't escape. She took a step toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean they'll do anything to protect themselves? What are you trying to say, Lucas?" He looked at her, his face pale and haunted, as if the weight of everything he'd kept hidden for so long was finally crushing him. "You don't understand, Em," he said softly, his voice shaking. "It's not just about Dad and Mom. It's not about the past or whatever you think you know about our family. There are people involved, dangerous people. People who don't care about families, or loyalty, or blood. They'll do anything to make sure the truth never comes out. And the more you dig, the more dangerous it gets." Emma's heart pounded in her chest, her pulse racing as the implications of his words sank in. "What people, Lucas? Who are they?" Her voice cracked with desperation, the weight of the truth suffocating her. Lucas shook his head, his eyes darting toward the door, as if he were afraid of someone hearing. "I can't tell you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If I tell you, it's too late. They'll come for you. And they'll come for Mom and Dad. And maybe even Lily. Lily. Emma's best friend. The one person who had stood by her through everything, the one person she had trusted without question. But now, the doubt crept in. Was Lily truly innocent in all this? Was there a hidden connection between her and the people Lucas was talking about? Or had Emma just been blind to something far bigger than she could have imagined? Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of it all. "You're asking me to choose, aren't you?" Emma's voice was a low murmur, the realization dawning on her like a gut punch. "You want me to choose between my family's safety and the truth." Lucas's eyes filled with regret, his shoulders slumping. "I never wanted to put you in this position, Em. But it's the only choice you have left. The truth isn't just dangerous, it's deadly. And if you keep pushing for it, it's not just your life at risk. It's everyone you care about. You have to stop digging. You have to stop asking questions, or they'll find you." Emma recoiled, her hands instinctively gripping the back of the couch as if it might anchor her in the whirlwind of emotions spinning out of control. How could she even think about stopping now? She had already uncovered too much, and the truth was just beyond her reach. Her thoughts raced back to the cryptic letters, the DNA test that had started it all, the pictures of her father, the strange diary entry she couldn't make sense of. Everything pointed to something huge, something she couldn't back away from. But Lucas was right. The stakes had never been higher. Whoever these people were, they were watching her, waiting for her to make a mistake. If she kept going down this path, there was no telling who would get hurt, or worse, who would disappear next. The weight of the decision crashed down on her like a tidal wave. Every answer she found seemed to lead to more questions, and every new piece of the puzzle only made things worse. But what was the alternative? To turn her back on everything she had learned, to stop asking questions and live in the shadow of ignorance. To betray everything she stood for, her curiosity, her need for justice, her loyalty to those she loved, just to protect herself and those she cared about. The phone rang suddenly, its sharp, insistent sound cutting through the silence and breaking Emma's concentration. She glanced at the screen, but the number was unfamiliar. Her hand hovered over the phone, her heart in her throat. Whoever this was, they knew everything. They knew she was getting close. She could feel it. Lucas took a deep breath, his expression torn between guilt and fear, as if he was about to say something he knew would break her. "Em, you don't have a choice. You need to stop now." But Emma didn't hear him. Her thumb hovered over the screen, and against her better judgment, she answered the call. A voice on the other end was distorted, as if it had been altered to prevent recognition. "You're getting too close, Emma. You've been warned. If you keep going down this road, you'll lose everything. We know where you are. We know who you care about. This is your last chance to turn back." Her blood ran cold. The voice, whoever it was, spoke with such certainty, such menace, that for a split second, Emma felt as if the ground beneath her had vanished entirely. She was no longer safe, no longer protected by the illusion of control she had clung to for so long. She had crossed a line, and now the danger was real. It was here, in her home, in her life, in the lives of the people she loved. And there was no turning back. As the call ended with a sharp click, Emma was left standing in the deafening silence, the weight of the decision crushing her chest. The truth was there, just beyond her reach, but the cost of finding it might be higher than she was willing to pay. And with the storm of uncertainty closing in, Emma knew she had only one choice left to make: stay quiet and protect the people she loved, or risk everything to uncover a truth that might tear them all apart. The call ended with a cold click, but Emma's hands didn't stop shaking. She stared at her phone screen, feeling the weight of what had just happened sink in. Her mind was reeling. She had been warned again. Whoever was on the other end of that call wasn't playing games anymore. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that the stakes had reached a point where there was no going back. It wasn't just about her family anymore, or the twisted puzzle of secrets that had started with the DNA test. It was bigger. Much bigger. And as she looked at Lucas, who still stood frozen in the middle of the living room, his face a mask of guilt and regret, she felt the sharp sting of betrayal gnawing at her gut. She couldn't even look at him the same way anymore. Her brother, her protector, the person who was supposed to be her ally in all of this, had been lying to her. He had kept so much from her, and now she was left with more questions than answers. Why had he stayed silent for so long? What was he really involved in? "Lucas," she said, her voice trembling. "Who are they? Who's behind all this?" He didn't meet her gaze. Instead, he glanced around the room, his eyes darting nervously, like someone was watching them from the shadows. "Em, you don't understand. They'll kill you if you keep asking these questions. They'll kill anyone who gets in the way." "Who will?" Her voice cracked. "Who are these people, Lucas?" But Lucas didn't answer. He was shaking now, the color drained from his face. His hands were clenched into fists, his breathing shallow. Something inside Emma snapped. This was it. This was the moment where everything she thought she knew would either break or make sense. She wasn't going to let fear stop her now. Not again. She stepped closer, grabbing his arm, forcing him to look at her. "What aren't you telling me?" Before he could respond, there was a loud crash from the hallway. Both of them froze, adrenaline surging through Emma's veins. It came from the direction of the front door, and without another word, Lucas rushed to the window, pulling the curtain aside. His face turned pale, and his eyes widened in horror. "Get down," he whispered urgently. "They're here." The pounding of footsteps outside echoed through the house, and Emma felt a cold wave of panic wash over her. Her mind scrambled for any solution, any way out, but there was nothing. She was trapped. And as she turned toward the door, a figure emerged from the shadows of the hallway, stepping into the living room like it had all been planned. It was her mother. But it wasn't the same mother Emma had known. This woman, this stranger, was different. Her face was calm, almost too calm, and her eyes. Emma couldn't recognize the coldness in them. It was as if the woman she thought she could trust had vanished, replaced by someone else entirely. "Mom," Emma said, a catch in her voice. What's going on? Who are these people? Her mother didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. You should have stopped digging a long time ago, Emma, she said, her voice flat, almost rehearsed. But now you've gone too far. Emma's mind raced. This was impossible. Her mother had been the one person she thought would always have her back. But now, standing in front of her, Emma felt the chilling truth sink in. Her mother wasn't just protecting a secret. She was part of it. Part of whatever had been unfolding beneath their very noses. You knew about all of this. Emma's voice broke, her heart aching as the realization set in. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me get involved in this? Her mother's lips twisted into a faint smile, one that seemed far too cold for comfort. Because you were always going to get involved, Emma. You were always going to dig, always going to ask questions. And now it's too late to stop. Emma felt a chill creep down her spine, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. This wasn't just about family secrets anymore. This was about something far more dangerous. She had thought she was fighting for the truth, but now she understood that the truth was something she wasn't ready to face. The conspiracy was larger than she could have ever imagined, and it wasn't just her family that had been compromised, it was everyone she knew. They had all been pawns in a game that had been played long before she even realized it. And then, as if to prove her mother's chilling words true, a voice called out from the door, Emma, you've done well to come this far. But now, you've reached the point of no return. Emma's heart slammed in her chest as the figure stepped out from the shadows. It wasn't someone she recognized at first, but as the light hit their face, Emma's breath caught in her throat. It was Detective Carter, the man who had been helping her with the case from the very beginning. The man she had trusted. The man she had confided in. Except now, there was no warmth in his eyes. No reassurance. Only cold calculation. You, Emma whispered, stepping back. You're part of this too? Carter smirked, the expression one that sent a wave of disgust through her. You really thought I was on your side, Emma? You thought I was helping you? No, I was always here to make sure you didn't get too close. And now, I've done my job. Emma could barely breathe, her chest tightening as the walls seemed to close in on her. She had been played from the beginning, and all the people she had trusted, her own family, her friends, even the detective, had been hiding their true motives. This wasn't just a family mystery anymore. This was a conspiracy that stretched far beyond her, and now it was too late to escape. Why? Emma managed to choke out. Why would you do this? Her mother stepped forward, her voice cold and sharp. Because the truth isn't something people like us can afford, Emma. Some things are better left buried. Carter nodded, his gaze steady. Your family is just one small piece of a much larger puzzle. And now, you've been dragged into it, whether you like it or not. The pressure of everything was becoming too much. Emma was suffocating, caught in a web of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. The people she had trusted most were the ones who had deceived her, who had led her into the heart of a conspiracy she couldn't escape. And now, with nowhere to run, she had no choice but to face the horrifying truth. The answers were slipping further away, and the more she tried to hold on to them, the more she realized that the cost of knowing the truth might be more than she could pay. The game was no longer about finding the truth. It was about surviving it. As the walls closed in, Emma was faced with an impossible choice: to keep digging and risk losing everything, or to back down and let the darkness claim her forever. The darkness was suffocating, and Emma could feel it closing in on her with every step she took deeper into the abandoned warehouse. The walls seemed to pulse with the weight of everything she had uncovered in the past few days, the lies, the betrayals, the secrets hidden in plain sight. Her heart pounded in her chest, the sound almost deafening in the eerie silence that enveloped the space. She had been here before, but this time, it felt different. The shadows weren't just the remnants of a forgotten building. They were the ghosts of her past, the lingering presence of people who had shaped her world, only to shatter it in an instant. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, but she couldn't stop now. She couldn't let it all fall apart without getting the truth, no matter what it cost. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for any sign of movement, any hint of who was behind all this. The chilling realization from earlier still burned in her mind. Detective Carter, the one person she thought she could trust, had been orchestrating it all. The phone call, the manipulation, the way he had been one step ahead the entire time, it was all a game to him. A game where she had been nothing but a pawn. But not anymore. She had fought too hard, lost too much, to let him win. Now, she was ready for the final confrontation, ready to face whatever lay ahead, no matter how dark the truth was. And then she saw him. Carter was standing by the far wall, his back turned to her, his silhouette framed by the dim light filtering in from the cracks in the warehouse's windows. He didn't turn as she approached, but she could feel his presence, the weight of it pressing down on her shoulders. He had known she would come here. He had known she would keep pushing, keep digging, no matter how many warnings he had thrown her way. But now, as she stood in front of him, the tension was unbearable. The truth was so close she could almost taste it, but she had no idea what it would cost her to finally uncover it. "Did you really think you could just walk away from this?" Carter's voice broke the silence, low and menacing. He didn't need to look at her to make his words cut through the air. "You've already crossed a line you can't uncross. Everything you've done, everything you've uncovered, has been leading to this moment." Emma's pulse quickened, her body tense as she squared her shoulders and faced him. "I know what you did," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "You've been manipulating everything from the start. You're the one who set me on this path, and now I'm going to finish it." Carter chuckled, the sound cold and cruel. "You think you've figured it all out? You think you know the truth? You don't have a clue, Emma. You never did." He turned to face her then, his eyes gleaming with something darker, something that sent a chill through her bones. "You've been a part of something far bigger than you ever imagined. It's not just about your family or about me. It's about power, about control. And you, Emma, were always meant to be a part of it." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their meaning. Emma's mind raced, trying to piece it all together. The DNA test, the hidden documents, the strange encounters with people she had trusted, all of it had led her here, to this moment. But what Carter was saying, it didn't make sense. How could she, someone so small in the grand scheme of it all, be a part of this larger conspiracy? "You've been working with my mother, haven't you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper as the pieces began to fall into place. "You've been using her to keep me in the dark, to control everything from the shadows." Carter's smirk faltered for just a second before he regained his composure. "Your mother is a piece of this puzzle too, Emma. She always has been. But she's not the mastermind. You're looking at the bigger picture all wrong." He took a step toward her, his presence suffocating. "You've always been part of this plan, Emma. You just didn't know it." Suddenly, everything she had believed, everything she had fought for, seemed to unravel before her eyes. She thought she was just trying to uncover a family secret, to expose the truth about her parents, but now it was clear, she had been caught in the middle of something far more dangerous. Something that had been brewing long before she was ever born. "Your father was one of the key players in all of this," Carter continued, his voice low and almost intimate now. "And your mother, well, she's been playing her part all along, just like I've been playing mine. You're the missing piece, Emma. You've always been the one who could connect the dots, who could bring everything crashing down. You were never meant to escape this." Emma's mind spun, the weight of his words threatening to crush her. "No," she whispered, her voice thick with disbelief. "No, that's not possible. My dad, my parents, they would never." "They weren't who you thought they were," Carter said, his tone cold. "And neither were you, Emma." Just then, Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the suffocating silence. She fumbled for it, her hands slick with sweat as she pulled it out and stared at the screen. The message was from Lucas. "Get out of there, Emma. They're not who you think they are. You have to leave before it's too late." Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she almost believed she had misread the situation. Maybe Lucas wasn't the enemy after all. Maybe he was trying to warn her, to get her to run before it was too late. But then Carter's laugh echoed through the room, cruel and sharp. "You really think you can just run away, Emma?" he taunted. "There's no escaping this now. You're in too deep. You've been part of this from the beginning, and there's no way out." Suddenly, Everything made sense. The warning from Lucas, the twisted games Carter had played with her emotions, the pieces of the puzzle that hadn't quite fit, it was all part of one massive manipulation. But even as Emma realized the horrifying truth, she felt the flood of adrenaline pushing her into action. She wasn't going to let Carter win. She wasn't going to let this be the end of her story. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Maybe I can't undo everything that's been done. But I can make sure you don't control me anymore. This ends tonight. Before Carter could respond, Emma hurled the phone at the nearest stack of crates, sending it crashing to the ground. The sudden noise startled him just long enough for her to make her move. She dove for the exit, her heart racing as she pushed through the door and into the night, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind her. The fight wasn't over. But as she ran, she realized something terrifying. No matter how far she went, no matter how fast she ran, the truth was always going to follow her. The final twist hit her like a punch to the gut as she reached the street, the cold night air stinging her skin. In the distance, she saw Lucas standing there, waiting for her. She ran toward him, only to freeze in place when he raised his hand, holding a gun aimed directly at her. The world around Emma felt like it was spinning out of control. Her breath came in quick, sharp gasps as she stood there, frozen in the dim streetlight, staring at her brother. The weight of his gun, aimed squarely at her chest, seemed to press down on her like an anvil, suffocating every ounce of breath she had left. For a moment, she thought she might collapse right there, but somehow, in the midst of everything, her family's betrayal, the conspiracy, the lies, something inside her held firm. Something inside her wouldn't let her crumble. She wasn't going to let it end like this. Lucas, she whispered, barely able to find her voice. Her heart hammered in her chest, the pounding so intense she could feel it in her throat. Why? Why are you doing this? After everything? His eyes flickered, a brief, almost imperceptible flicker of regret, but it was gone just as quickly as it appeared. He stood motionless, his face unreadable, the gun trembling in his hand. For a long moment, they just stood there, a strange stillness hanging between them, like the calm before a storm. It was the same silence that had haunted their family for as long as Emma could remember, the silence that had allowed all the lies to grow, the secrets to fester. I didn't want this for you, Lucas finally spoke, his voice low and broken. But you made me choose, Emma. You had to know. And once you knew, there was no going back. The people we're dealing with, they don't let anyone walk away once they're involved. Not even family. Especially not family. His words hit her like a ton of bricks, and for a fleeting moment, she understood the depth of his fear, his helplessness. But there was no time for empathy. There was no time to waste on understanding the reasons behind his betrayal. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about her. It was about the truth that had dragged them all to this point, and now, standing at the edge, she had to decide if she would let it consume her or if she would fight back. Lucas, she said, her voice growing stronger, I know you're scared. But you have to see, this isn't just about them. It's about us. It's about what we've lost, what we've been too afraid to face. She stepped forward, inching closer to him, her heart racing faster with every movement. You're not alone in this. We've been running from the truth for too long, but I'm done hiding. I'm not scared anymore. And I don't want you to be either. His eyes hardened again, and for a split second, Emma thought he might pull the trigger. But then something shifted in him. His hand dropped, the gun slipping from his grasp to the ground with a dull thud. He looked at her, his face pale, but there was something else in his eyes now, something she hadn't seen before. Guilt. Shame. Maybe even a hint of relief. He was trapped in the same web of lies, and for the first time, he wasn't sure if he could keep playing the game. I don't know if I can fix this, Lucas said, his voice hoarse. I don't know if I can make it right. Emma reached out, placing a hand gently on his arm. The years of distance between them felt like they were crumbling, the walls that had separated them falling away. We can't fix everything, she replied softly. But we can start over. We can stop the cycle of fear. We can choose a different path. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Lucas nodded. He didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes said enough. They were in this together, for better or worse. And that was enough for Emma. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. The conspiracy that had haunted their family for so long was far from over. There were still people out there, lurking in the shadows, watching them. But for the first time, Emma didn't feel like a victim. She felt like someone who had finally taken control of her own story. She was no longer afraid of the truth. No longer afraid of what it would cost her. As they walked away from the warehouse, the weight of the gun's barrel no longer pressing on her chest, Emma glanced up at the stars. The night was still and quiet, but she could feel the tension in the air beginning to shift. There was peace now, but it wasn't the kind of peace that came from hiding the truth. It was the kind of peace that came from facing it head-on, no matter how painful. The past might never be fully erased, but she had made a choice. She had chosen to fight, to uncover the truth, and to stand firm in her own skin. But as they stepped into the car, as they started driving away from everything they had known, Emma couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the danger wasn't really over. The mystery had been partially solved, but the shadows still lurked, stretching far beyond what she could see. And deep down, Emma knew that the truth she had uncovered was just the beginning. There were still pieces missing, pieces that would likely haunt her for the rest of her life. The car drove into the night, the headlights cutting through the darkness, but no matter how far they went, and as she glanced at Lucas beside her, the weight of what they had learned and what they still didn't know hung heavy in the air. The conspiracy had its claws in too deep, and while the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, she knew this was far from over. There were still secrets to uncover, and not all of them were meant to be found.